I have a saying, watch what the hands are doing, not what the mouth is saying. Just watch what the hands are doing everywhere. What they're trying to do is remove the power of the individual and impose the power of the state. We've already got too much state. We need the individual to be cut free. We need the brambles to be cut back, the light to come in, and we need to cut the size of the state and empower those people who are going to take risk and drive our economy. As well as, I always think human relationships are far better, you and I having a relationship rather than the state trying to impose some sort of relationship between people which never works.
I mean, these are all things that have been self-evident conventional wisdom for decades until right now. Until now, when everything, I mean, for example, you having to explain why actually breaking the back of the farmers is a bad thing for Britain. Why should you have to explain that? That should be so self-evident.
Well, they see it, I think, as an elitist part of Britain, but what they don't, none of them farm, and I actually do. It's my passion. I've always wanted to farm, but for various reasons, in the end, largely because my father had 5 wives, and I didn't get on with some of my stepmothers, so I ended up having to go and make my own way, and ended up in the city. And then I've actually got my own farm now, which I bought. And it's my passion. And when I get filled with bullet holes from whether it's the establishment, whether it's my colleagues at Reform, whoever, the sanity returns when I walk my crops and I look at things growing, and I think to myself, there's no way that I can actually change nature. Nature is what it is. You have to respect it. You have to be humble. You have to work with it. You can't work against it. And this is, I think, where man's gone so wrong now. And this is where I think, in answer to your question about the political parties, there's a lot of very lightweight people who are there, as we know, because Blair and Cameron selected people on quotas, not on merit. And there's an arrogance, there's an underlying arrogance rather than a humility. And people think they can control everything, which they will learn that they can't. They can't. They simply can't. They think they can. And the latest fad, obviously, is trying to live forever, and all the things that the modern man or woman thinks that she can achieve, and the arrogance that comes with it is quite incredible. But let's move on to the Tories. So the Tories, I think, I get on very well with the Tories. I think there are some very good young Tories. I think they are Tory. And there's a difference between being Conservative and being a Tory, as you and I know. Yes. A lot of other people probably don't know that, but I think we know that.
I think the public's becoming well aware that the Conservatives are actually not Conservative.
No, they're Lib Dems. There's about 70 Lib Dem Tories. So that is in itself an oxymoron, but that's what they are. So I think there is some light within the Tory party, but the problem is we've had a series of very weak leaders who have brought in people in their own image rather than the people who should have been brought in. And reformed, I think the Tory party is still, as it was when Maggie Thatcher reformed it after, too much socialism, which, as you know, ended in Britain being the laughingstock of the world, having to go to the IMF, beer and sandwiches in number 10.
My father,
for the unions.
All through my youth, my father would regale me with tales of how they would have the electricity would go out during the middle of the week, or the rubbish wouldn't be.
When I was at school, we used to have prep boards, and we had candles on the prep board because electricity went out when you needed it to study.
Yes.
So look, I mean, the miners' strikes, we had obviously, it was a shocking period. And after the 60s, which I think was a wonderful period, and in some ways that was the sort of release post-war, but then we got the socialism, and we got, the death of Britain, really, of enterprise, which is what happens when you get collectivism. So, and there's always been a battle, in my view, between collectivism and individualism. I'm firmly in the individual camp. I loathe collectivism. I think collectivism should be fought at every turn. So it hides all sorts of sins and weaknesses, and you only have to look at what happened. The communists lasted 1.5 generations, and when the wall finally came down, there was nothing there.
Yeah,
and I can remember that. That was great. So we don't seem to learn from that, and we are getting to the stage now where, we have got too much collectivism. Why would you take risk if you decide something's a good idea and you invest and you make money, the state takes it all off you. But if you lose money because you're wrong, and that's the essence of an entrepreneur, is to lubricate the system, you still have to write the check. And now it's getting more and more difficult to offset those losses against other income streams. So what do people do? The answer is nothing, which is what happened under communism. So nobody creates enterprise. Nobody employs other people. Nobody bothers to do anything other than, if they're rich, sit on their backside and enjoy the sort of, whether it's the benefits of their labours or their forebears is another matter. But the Tories, so I think there are some good things in the Tories, but I want to answer your question on this. But I think they've got a long way to go. I think head office is a problem. I think that
CCHQ is a
the
problem.
Lib Dem Tory
Party?
MPs are a problem.
Really?
And I think the jury's still very much out on whether they've picked the right leader. And I have nothing against Kemi. I think she's a nice lady, but has she covered herself in glory at the dispatch box? Probably not. Is she going to be able to do what is necessary for the Tory party? I think it's possible that she will find it difficult.
So I have to ask the question that is hanging in the air. Are you going to join the Conservative Party?
Well, I think if I wanted to, I could, but I don't think it would be right to do that at the moment. As I say, I think a reformed Tory party would be interesting, but I don't see how they can get themselves out of their current malaise. And let's face it, they did have quite a long play with the toy set, not least Boris with an 80-seat majority who did the square root of nothing.
If he'd done nothing, things would be better.
Indeed, it seemed to me at the latter part of his sort of tenure that actually it was his wife running the country rather than him. It was her policies that seemed to be coming through rather than his. And if you look at what Boris wrote, between 2000 and 2015, he wrote some great stuff.
He did.
Unfortunately, he couldn't deliver it.
Well, this is the question about Boris. Was he sincere, or was he just saying what people wanted to hear? And like you say, you can say whatever you like, but you've got to watch what the hands are doing. And the hands were very, very just an open betrayal, just plunging daggers.
I think the answer is the mouth said a lot, but we didn't see much from the hands, Carl. I think the main issue is the immigration. That was extraordinary. Legal immigration.
Yeah, 100%. Because the illegal immigration is always used as a bit of a smokescreen by the Conservatives in particular. But you brought them in and put them in hotels, so don't talk to me about the illegals. But it's the legals that are the issue. I mean, we see it in Swindon High Street now. There's just people from just all over the world sat around drinking coffee, and I'm paying for the privilege.
Yep.
And this is all thanks to Boris Johnson. So thanks, Boris.
So that's the Tories. They need to reform, basically. Obviously, the Lib Dems.
Well,
when all this,
you're not going to join the Lib Dems.
Well, when all this nonsense happened, Daisy Cooper threw her arms around me and said, "Was I okay?" And I sort of, pinched myself and thought, because I'm often up against her on the different side of the equation. But by the way, I like political debate.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, Wedgie Ben was one of my heroes. I don't mind people who say what they think if it disagrees with me, but as long as they're honest about it, unlike Keir Starmer, unlike most of the Labour front bench. Anyway, she threw her arms around me and said, "What, okay?" Because I think everybody in Parliament could see that what reform did to me was vile, unfair, and just totally unjust. So despite the fact that, the accusations they made against me, the fact that I had early onset dementia and I was showing signs of losing my temper, and that I was bullying people, which is complete nonsense, and that I made threats which I didn't. So at the end of the day, she came up to me, and I did say to her, "Well, I'm okay, Daisy, but lesser men might be in the Priory by now." So anyway, we've carried on, and I think there is now some light there. But the Lib Dems, I find it hard to take them seriously, to be honest.
Oh, really?
Very hard.
I don't mean to laugh, but I watched Ed Davies' campaigns, and don't get me wrong, I'd like to go to Alton Towers with him, but I don't really want him running the country.
What, falling off surfboards in Windermere or wherever it was?
He looks like a fun guy, doesn't he? But like I said, I don't really want him in charge of the country.
No.
So they're not appealing to you then, the Liberal Democrats?
No, and the Greens, I can't take. I simply can't take them seriously. But, so...
What, a communist Islamic alliance? Oh, yeah, I'm not in favour of those either.
So that's a quick roundup. But, I mean, the essence of Parliament is that we have sort of a group of people who don't represent what I think should be represented in Parliament. It's not the cutting edge of Britain. It's a hollowed out, rather average group of people who, you know, those fish that sort of swim around like this, and they swim around like this, and they swim around. I think it's a bit like that.
Yeah.
If you would like to see the full version of this premium video, please head over to lotuseaters.com and subscribe to gain full access to all of our premium content.